parents who have young children, in the elementary school age, who are still at home. Maybe they're not in school yet. Storytelling and sharing, right? Teaching about the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's different ways of modeling empathy, or teaching, or just showing us what empathy is so important. And so, for example, teaching a child that when that his custom was, when he was leading prayer, that if he heard a child, and it's important to use these references, because you're connecting them to the Prophet ﷺ. And by referencing examples and stories where children are centered in the example, it's a really good way to show just how important children were to the Prophet ﷺ, and how he modeled this quality of empathy. So the fact that a child crying was enough for the Prophet ﷺ to shorten the prayer, although he loved, of course, the prayer. He would stand for hours in his own worship. He loved the Book of Allah. He loved praying in Jama'at with his companions, and so he loved all of that. But his empathy, his ability to feel on such a deep level what the mother and the child are both experiencing, that are distraught, right? Because a child crying, there's usually some reason. It's either pain or discomfort of some type. It causes this level of anxiety and paranoia and fear and all of these emotions to come up for the mother, because of course she wants to tend to the child's need, but then there's also other people in the prayer as well that are affected. So there's just this amazing display of empathy across the board for everybody involved, but in particular for those who are directly involved, which are the mother and the child. So teaching the child that makes the child feel special, right? If you think about the way you frame a story like that, or an example like that, and just emphasize that the Prophet ﷺ loved children so, so much, that he, as soon as a child would cry, if he had a little boo-boo, or he was hungry, or she was hurting, that he would stop the prayer or shorten the prayer. SubhanAllah, this will make the child feel really special. So the way that we teach these stories, which we'll get to toward the end, is really important too, right? The degree of passion that we speak with, and the emphasis that we're making when we're telling these stories, is so, so crucial. The next example is the story of Abu Umair and the bird. This is one of the most often repeated stories to really show the Prophet ﷺ's emotional intelligence. Here is a little companion named Abu Umair who lost his bird, who was titled Nughair, or I think that was like a nickname that he had for the bird. And so when the Prophet ﷺ heard that this little boy was distraught and saddened and in grief because he lost his bird, he he tended to him. He went and visited him. He actually, took the time. Just imagine how much the weight on his shoulders, and how many things he was dealing with at all the time. But he actually prioritized, visiting this boy, and then inquiring about his pet that passed away. For us, right, we need to see his perfect model, and that's exactly what he was showing us, that it's important to know that children have soft hearts. And for us, we get very desensitized by death. As we grow, we lose people, we lose things. But for a child to lose something so precious to that child, it requires us to be attentive, and to really give our full attention to that child, and show them that we care. And so he models that so beautifully in that story. um, and then another great example, and again, as we know, as parents and educators, young children love any story that has to do with animals. So these are all, again, very selected examples. There's many of them, but I feel like it's effective to kind of read your audience and know that there's certain things that will get their attention more, right? So talking about this child who had this experience, here's a loss, and then it's a bird. Animals are again fun for children. And then this next example is really interesting, because this comes from a story where Aisha radiallahu anha, our mother, she actually admits that she was frustrated with her camel at some point. And, she may have like lightly tapped it, or gently, struck the camel because she was frustrated. And so when she shared this with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is correcting her, and he tells her, you must be gentle, Verily, gentleness is not in anything except that it beautifies it, and it is not removed from anything except that it disgraces it. Beautiful lesson for every single one of us, but I think it's also a great lesson for us to see that, he is to his beloved wife, she is, our mother, and of course, she's such an incredible role model for all of us. But in her own, growth, she admitted to doing something that he is beautifully and gently correcting her with the same advice that he's giving her, right? He's being gentle. He's not admonishing, because he's also recognizing that, she's learning too, just like we all are. And sometimes, we get upset about things, but he's just reminding her that it's better not to, even if it's a gentle tap. Sometimes if you see people riding horses or camels, they might have a little whip or something, and it's not meant to harm. It's just meant to, to correct. But he's telling us that it's always better to have a gentle approach in every scenario. It's always better. So beautiful way to again teach. And this was these are just some examples. Now, this next example I wanted to share, it's really, I think, one of the best stories to share with children, because it's just, subhanAllah, our Prophet ﷺ, he really left us treasures upon treasures. And it's only when you start to unearth it and you see, subhanAllah, the amazing just wisdoms, endless wisdoms of every interaction he had. But here, the Prophet ﷺ was once sitting in a gathering, and to his right was this young boy, and to his left were all of these elderly men. Okay. And so someone had brought a vessel, and it's not clear if it was water or milk, but the Prophet ﷺ drank from that vessel. Now, again, he's modeling at all times. After he takes the first sip, he actually turns to this little boy on the right, and he asks him, he says, would you mind if I, shared this, to like go to the left, because of all of these older men, basically, they're all these elderly men in the gathering. And so he's asking in a way permission, right, from this boy, if he would mind that he actually, gives them the opportunity to drink after him. And the boy, he immediately answers the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, and this is, by the way, in Sahih al-Bukhari, but he says to him, I will not prefer anybody to have my share from you, oh, Allah's apostle, or Ya Rasulullah. So he basically tells him, I want the turn because you drank, and it's my turn and I want it. And the Prophet ﷺ gives him the drink. So this is just another wonderful story to tell children, so that they really see themselves in the story, right? And this is a way of inculcating empathy as well, because it's giving them an opportunity to be a part of the story in a very relevant way. They can connect more when children, with animals, with things that they associate with easily, when stories like that are shared. So this is just a really great example. And the fact that the Prophet ﷺ asked him and honored him that way, again, really connects children to the Prophet ﷺ, which is what we want. We want that love, the seeds of that love, planted very, very early. And so stories are a great way to do that. Alhamdulillah.